Hey, folks, this is Doc Huffbauer coming to you from my studio here in Alvin, Texas. Today, I am joined by Dr. Emily Letran. And Emily is a consultant and a practicing dentist. We're going to talk a little bit about her life story, how she got to where she is, what it is that she does to help other dentists, and her life as an entrepreneur in dentistry. But first, let's take a little time to talk about our sponsor. Okay, folks, we're back. Emily, how are you? I haven't seen you in quite some time.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on the podcast. And thank you so much for creating this platform so we can share our insights, our thoughts, our resources with our colleagues to grow our businesses as dentists. I'm doing okay. I'm coming in from California, and it's great, with this technology where we can be talking as if we're in the same room, right? And a couple
Absolutely.
couple hours difference in time zone.
Absolutely. I'll be out there with my wife over the next couple of weeks. We're going out to Cabo. So I'll be near you guys, the California Peninsula.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, let me know. I'm close to Pasadena, which is about 45 miles east of LAX.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Well, so Emily, you've been doing this consulting thing for how many years now?
it's going on 7 years.
Okay. And when did you become a dentist?
Uh, it's 1993. Graduated from UCLA.
Gotcha. And so what was it that, it made you pursue dentistry as a career? What was kind of the build up to that? Was it a childhood thing? Was it something you're just like, hey, I think I'm going to be a dentist one day? What was that? What brought you here?
Well, this is the part where I tell people this is the uninspiring story uh, on, becoming a dentist. I'll tell you a little bit from the background. So I was actually born in Vietnam
Right.
back in the late 60s. So I grew up basically during the Vietnam War. And then the communists took over in 1975 when the war ended. And a couple of years after that, my aunt decided to leave the country because, life is very different with the communists versus the free country before that. And so she took me, my older brother, her two kids, and two other cousins to escape. So we left on a boat. We ended up in a refugee camp in Malaysia, and then we came to the U.S. So when I came to the U.S., I share with people my luggage really were just hope and faith. As a 13 years old, it's not like you know a whole lot. You know enough to be scared, but you don't know enough to be worried, because if it were at this age,
Right.
I'd be really worrying, right? So I was just trying to learn to assimilate. Um, when I went to high school, they tell you to take, foreign language, and the choices were English and French. I mean, French and Spanish, and I didn't even know what Spanish was. So I just took French because I had no idea what Spanish was. So as I went through high school, went through college, it's a lot of just learning the culture. And I'm on the conservative side, so I only need to know enough to get by per se, right? Like this is a safe zone. I'm just going to do this. But when it came time to deciding where to go once I was in college for 3 years, undeclared. I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, but I didn't know which one. So toward the end of the second year, I was thinking, okay, I do not want to be a doctor because doctors were wearing beepers. Remember the beepers back in the day? I did not want to be bothered with the beepers. And I look at the cell phone now, right? And so I checked out pharmacy. I went and talked to a pharmacist at Savon. I asked him what he does, and he said he count pills. So I thought, no, that wasn't too cool. So one of my friends actually came up to me at a party one day and say, "Hey, I heard you wanted to go into pharmacy." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Don't do that." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because his parents were pharmacists back in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, the pharmacists run their own shop
Mm-hmm.
and, like Old Town, right? So where they dispense and they also give advice. So it's more than, what it is right now." So he said, "Don't be that. Go be a doctor." And I said, "No, I don't want to wear a beeper." So he said, okay, well, go be a dentist then. And that's how I chose dentistry. I really went into dentistry with, I think I had a couple of fillings in my mouth. It's very different from, I think a lot of my classmates, either they had extensive dental work, um, dentistry changed their life. That's why they
Right.
went into dentistry, or sometimes somebody in the family. Those are the two very common reasons why somebody go into dentistry. And for me, it was an advice from a friend to not do something else and just go do dentistry. And as I went through school and went through, my journey, I really appreciate that, because I think dentistry is one of those career where you can really build a relationship
Absolutely.
with your patients. Yeah. And I think that's the greatest blessing, being a dentist.
So, répayez-toi parler français?
Un peu.
Un peu. Je parle un peu. J'ai en classe à l'école et j'habite à Louisiane. It's a little
Oh,
bit different. It's a broken French or patois,
right,
but I still
right,
speak a
right,
little
right.
bit. But it's been so many years since I've had someone to
Yes,
practice with.
yes, I did 4 years of French. And then when I was in college, I did 1 year of Spanish. And yeah, we had a great French teacher. The first day you're in class, she said you have to pick a name, a French name, and then you cannot speak English. So the first day you could ask going to the bathroom, and that was it. That was your your chance. But we had a
Oh
great
man!
opportunity. We actually read literature. We actually read an abridged version of Les Miserables in French.
Oh, that's my
And
favorite. Actually, it's
yeah,
funny. My two favorite musicals, Les Miserables and Miss
uh-huh.
Saigon.
Oh, okay. I have never seen Miss Saigon, but Les
Oh, you've got
Miserables
to see it.
is my favorite book.
But you've got to see it
That's
on Broadway though. You don't just go to like a, you know, regular
right, right, right.
production.
The last time we went to New York, it wasn't on, so I'm gonna schedule it to coincide like that. I Yeah, but Les Miserables is my favorite book. Actually, my first Christmas in the U.S. was spent reading the original version of Les Miserables. I read it with a dictionary bigger than the book right next to me, because we had nowhere to go. We didn't have family, so I was just at home. I got 2 weeks. And I decided to tackle that book. And I knew the story because I read it in Vietnamese, right? So, and this was when I came, I was in 8th grade. So I haven't learned any French or anything at that time. But yeah, that was my very first book I read in English. Took me
So
2 weeks.
so as a second generation American that came from a communist country, do you worry about the future of the United States with the way that things are currently progressing?
I don't know. I would probably be considered first generation, right?
Well,
Because,
you weren't born here. You're
right,
actually kind of like in a
in
strange
the in
position because
between,
you came here so early, right?
right, right, because I came younger. Um, you know, the very first thing I want to say is I did not understand freedom until I got to this country. Because back there, and I think in any communist country, um, you live in a little bubble that the government created for you, right? So you read certain things that they allow you to read. You watch what they allow you to watch. So you don't really know that much, but because you didn't know there's life, outside of that,
You don't miss
you,
it.
you, you don't miss it. Then you came here and you go, what? Like I could do this, I could do that. So the way things are going in general, well, especially since about a little bit more than 2 years ago when the pandemic hit, right? So then all of a sudden, there's a lot of regulations, right? Um, and I'm okay with the regulation, just don't infringe on what I do
Personal
in
freedoms.
my practice, right?
Absolutely.
But I also hear a story of, and I think it's on social media, now it may or may not be true. Like even with us, oh, somebody's gonna report you if you are seeing patients and you're not supposed to, like that kind of thing.
Right. Well,
Which
and
is
it,
a
it
kind of
harkens back to
mhm,
the pogroms, Nazi
mhm,
pogroms and other communist country pogroms,
mhm.
where citizens were turned against each other, and they used that fear. It worries me a lot. I've spoken to a lot of friends who, like yourself, came from a communist country, and they tell me that the things they saw in the pandemic that there were very recognizable moves, that these were the same moves the communist countries did whenever they took over, is they created this division in society and they used that to make inroads. That scares the death out of me. We've got an amazing opportunity here. I think some of us haven't suffered enough privation in our lives to appreciate it, perhaps.
Yes, and I think what happened is, you know, just like anything, right? You take things for granted. And I, okay, well, I'll give you an example. When they say you cannot have a waiting room, right? Your patients have to stay outside and all that. I mean, I understood the science behind it, right? The
Mm,
reason, but I never did that.
right.
I just never did that. For me, it was just like, no, you don't tell me what I do in my house because our office is our house.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take that universal precaution. Of course, I step it up. I ask people to sit 6 feet, away from each other or whatever, but I never went that far, if you will, because I just don't believe in, that freedom being infringed on, right? For me,
Right.
as to how I run my practice. And I think so when people don't know that, and it just, here's a list of what you're supposed to do. I remember when it first happened, almost every day, the president of the CDA was having a little, like, he's hosting a meeting every day. And I went on
Mhm.
every day for a week. And basically what he said was he doesn't know what we're supposed to do.
Right. Well,
After a
there
week,
was a lot of uncertainty. You may
right,
remember I interviewed the president of the ADA and
right,
all of these people, and no one really knew what was going
exactly,
on. What
right.
frustrated me the most is, so I think you know this about me. Before I became a dentist, I had a whole life before becoming a dentist.
Mm-hmm,
I did everything from own a remodeling company to genetic research as a molecular and cellular biologist. And what frustrated me the most was so many smart people were subjugating their brain to the he said, she said thing, because we already knew what coronavirus did. I mean, if you were a virologist or a microbiologist or, a molecular and cellular biologist, you knew what it did and you knew the
right.
possibilities.
Mm-hmm,
And you knew that as morbidity increased, mortality would decrease because that's the way shit works. I mean, it's just
yeah,
science, you know.
right.
So it frustrated me that so many people subjugated their knowledge and their minds to propaganda is really what it was. And
Yes.
that upset me, but it also terrified me, um, because I was born much like yourself. I was born very, very poor. I had nothing, and my parents had nothing. My parents actually, it was kind of the proud moment of my dad's family that he went to trade school, because
Mm-hmm.
then he was, quote, in college, which it really wasn't,
Exact.
right?
Right,
But that was
right, right.
college to them, and so it was very different upbringing, I think, than most dentists have, because I think they have a lot of things handed to them. A lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it gives you a different philosophy. It gives you a different mindset, and it gives you, I think, maybe a fundamental confidence in the things that and you know them to be true.
Well, back when you and I went to school many decades ago, you really had to have the means to go.
Right.
Because if you back then, either you have to, you have the family has to have the money, or you need to get the scholarship or the grant,
Right.
or you have to qualify for the loan, because sometimes the loan doesn't even cover the whole thing, right? Then you have to go
Right.
and borrow personal loan. So it was a little different when we went to school versus now, where I think you can just take out the whole loan, but at least the loan is available,
Right.
right? And I know some of my friends back then, if they're in another state, like one of my friends was living in Florida, I mean, in Alabama, and between her and her sister, they took turn go to school one year, go to work, then the other one go to school, and between the
And
two
that's
of
just the
them,
way we did things.
yes, yes, one of them became a doctor, and one of them became a pharmacist. So it was different. It was for me. It has always been okay. This is a tough situation. Go back to the basics, right? What do I
Right.
know, right? And what scared me, well, the one moment that really scared me was when one time I had a PhD. She teaches at a private university in Southern California, a very famous one. And she was coming in with two little kids. And so she came in, I think maybe 5 minutes before her appointment. So she actually called from the parking lot and she said, "Can I come in?" Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, yeah, come in. Because I mean, again, I wasn't doing the waiting room thing. She came in, she was in the front. I was dismissing a patient. So, patient was walking out. And there was another patient that came in from the morning to pick up a repaired denture. So basically, there were three people in the waiting room crossing paths, and
Right.
her two little kids. And she said, Dr. Letran, let me go. Can I talk to you in another room? So I took her to room one, and she practically yelled at me.
Yeah.
Why would you have three people in the waiting room? And she's been a patient for a very long time. And it scared me because this is a PhD.
Right.
She could she reads and she knows all these things, and there are three people passing by.
There's an
They
assumption of knowledge, an assumption
right,
of intellectual capacity.
right. But she was practically yelling at me, and we good friends. We joked and we talked about this and that, and that's when I realized that number one is I got to decide like what I'm going to do, right? Based on what I know. Because if I just have these kind of people dictating me, I, you know, I may as well just like, you know, hey, what would your schedule, what would you like for your schedule to be? Let me just do
Right.
it for you, right? And the second thing is to understand, to realize that fear of propaganda, um, it gets to all of these people. And
Absolutely.
so whatever coming out of their mouth is you can play safe if you want, or you gonna have to kind of put your foot down and tell them some science and stuff. But you got to pick which way you want to go. And I think it's great because we can still do that right now. We can still have that personal freedom. Um, and then at the same time, you realize that propaganda, that power of propaganda, right? Because when I came here, I understood how powerful it was. Like
Right.
today, right now, I can sing those songs to you, and I learned them when before I was 13, right? Because it's just ingrained in your head, and I could recount certain incidents, things, that we follow this and we do this and this, and because it's that strong, and I think people need to you know, like again, like I said, go back to the basics. We already know a lot. We don't need
Right.
somebody to tell us what to do. And if they do tell us what to do, just take a moment and ask yourself,
Are they more qualified than me?
yes, or I mean, I didn't get here because I listened to so and so, right? I got
Right.
here because I was figuring things out. I was listening to some other practical gurus, and I think I'll stick to that.
Right.
And I hope people just pause and think about that before they go and implement the next thing that it would be told to them.
So we've covered a little bit about personal philosophy and kind
Okay.
of what makes you up and what kind of forces drive you as a person. Let's talk a little bit about you're in practice. You've been practicing since 93, right? And you suddenly something happens. It's like I tell patients, you've neglected your mouth for years. You came in today. What happened? Something changed the way you think, something changed your circumstance. What is it that moved you to treatment? So, what is it that moved you after all these years practicing to look around and say, I need to help people? Because from what people don't understand, I think about coaching, is that it's actually, if you are a successful dentist, it's actually a hardship to coach. It's a hardship to lecture, because when I was practicing clinical, it was nothing for me to make $10,000 in a day. I mean, like literally almost every day.
Mhm.
And to go on the circuit and to get an honorarium, a lot of people don't realize your honorariums are only like $3,500 to $7,500 unless you're actually the one who's doing the program. You're the one who's putting it on.
Mhm.
And then there's a lot of expenses involved there too. I think people don't realize these shows cost between $35,000 and $70,000 depending upon what venue you're in. So it's not a huge money making scheme. So you have to really have a passion for helping others to do it. So what was it that moved you to that place?
Well, first of all, I would say not everybody can be a coach. I truly believe it's a calling. Specifically for me, it was a calling because it's much easier to just show up and do dentistry, right? Than
Right.
do like you mentioned events. Most people don't even get to Like they don't even want to deal with events because
Right.
that's a whole other thing. So I was practicing
You know me, I'm not that smart. I just
yeah.
bite off things like that.
But like you're talking about this level because some people just want to start coaching. They don't need to put on an event. But I in back in about 2010, I was I got one of those consulting company. Back then they were called Exec Tech. I think they became MGE now. That's what I
MG,
hear.
yeah, yeah,
MGE. Yeah. So anyway, they would fax these, weekly facts on tips. And I was already reading. I graduated in '93. I did a GPR. So I worked from '94 to '97. Then I bought my first practice and then the second one, etc. But I was already reading, Dental Town, which is
hmm,
brand new there. I was reading The Profitable Dentist.
right,
I was going to little seminars. Like I was already doing all of this on my own, right? And it wasn't easy because you got to subscribe to things. It wasn't free stuff and things like that, right? As in right now. So I was reading all these facts, and I said, "This is pretty interesting." And then they sent a fax that say they have a meeting, right, in town at this office. So I went there, and it's just my luck. I was the only one that showed up, right? So I was there with two other consultants, and they were just like asking questions. And of course, as you know, we didn't really learn business in school. So
right,
sometimes when people start asking these questions, you're thinking, wait a minute, I've been doing this for so many years, and I don't know the answer to this, right?
right,
They came, they told me they want to talk to all my staff, and then they're going to give me a proposal. And I was very inclined to work with them. But what happened was they interviewed all my staff and they came back and they said, all of your staff have one chief complaint. And I said, what is it? And they said, every day you take off 2 hours to go pick up your kids from school. And that's their complaint. So one of our suggestions is for you to stop doing that. You need to get somebody to go pick up your kids. And that just totally turned me off. Because
hmm.
again, going back to,
Well,
I want to do,
they forgot your why.
I know. And they got this pretty nice, stack of proposal and, it's 30,000 or whatever back then. And I said, okay, no, thank you very much. And I said, uh, but that was really the thing that made me say no to them. And for a
Right,
lot of people, it may not be that big, but for me, it was very big. And I
absolutely,
conti- continued doing that until everybody got to high school, because in high school, we 1.5 block away from school. So everybody walk once they get to school, high school. So then I started looking into more of those consulting services. And I went to Scheduling Institute. I was one of the 5X member for a couple of years. When I found out that Jay Geyer is a student of Dan Kennedy, I said, okay, let me just move over and just study from Dan Kennedy because I don't need to
right.
pay whatever the amount was to work with Jay.
It was
And
an excessive amount too.
yes, well, he was the first one that went out there and said it's 100,000 for 2 years. And I
Right,
think it just shocked most people, the figure 100,000. Although there's a lot of consulting that is 30 to 50,000 a year, but because he phrased it that way, it was a big shock. Now he's a genius in marketing and he's a very good student because what Dan teach, I see him doing that. So I was still continuing to be in the Dan Kennedy circle. I actually met David Phelps. I'm sure you know him through Dan Kennedy circle because we've
hmm,
never met each other at any dental thing, you know. So and then one day we were in the room and I was sitting there with a couple of our dentist friends at this business conference, and we all thought, you know what, maybe we can use the knowledge that we already have to help other people, and at the same time we can monetize that because obviously you value your time. Yes, you're going to help, but at the same time, how about you just create another income?
right.
And the next thing I knew, Brendan Bouchard came on stage to talk about marketing. Then you can go to his event. I went to his event and he was pitching high performance coaching. So for me, it's almost like here's a path. You said you wanted to coach or teach people. Here's the guy. Here's the program. What are you going to do? So for me, it just made sense to do that. But once I did that, so I got certified in 2015. It took me about a year to like create some content, make a website that actually show that I have some experience per se.
Right.
Um, that's when I actually started doing that. My focus is on high performance coaching, which is personal growth.
Hmm.
I can do the consulting. I can, people ask, how to grow the team and get more patients, those kind of things. I think a lot of us could do that because, especially if we've done it ourselves, right, over the years. The high performance or the personal growth, I see such a big gap in healthcare,
Hmm.
which is what's holding you back. Like you say, what is your why? Sometimes you have a consultant come in and just like the one I described, they're just going to give you here, this is what you can do, but they never really try to understand why the heck I take 2 hours every day to go pick up my kids,
Yeah,
right?
that's definitely a missed touch point for them there. For
Right.
those of you who don't know, if you haven't done a lot of coaching, and Emily and I both have done hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of coaching, what you end up finding is that there are about 7 or 8 basic truths, and there are about 3 ways to tell a story about each one of those truths. And that's all the individual companies offer that's different, is a different way of telling you about a truth that is a universal truth. And what I found is that as I started getting into my 4th or 5th or 6th year of doing coaching with different people, that they were all teaching me the same things. And the lessons that they were teaching were common sense to me. Now, that's not to say I didn't learn anything, because I learned something, even if I watched the same video twice, I'll always learn something, because I'll say, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. That makes more sense. Because your brain's kind of like a spider web. You have all these little areas that you hang your knowledge on, and they interconnect. And so at some point, you get to where you just realize that you already know everything everyone is teaching. And then if you just come up with a different story to tell about one of those fundamental truths that might resonate with someone, that you might actually have something to give. And for me, I haven't gotten to that point where I want to do that yet. As you know, and we've spoken a lot. I've been very successful in practice. I'm very happy with where I am. I don't have, like you said, that drive, that need
Right.
to teach
Right.
others. And so I
And
don't know that that'll ever be a thing for me. People ask me all the time, "Do you do coaching?"
right. Right.
I'll give you some
Well,
tips here for free.
yeah,
Just do this. Just
right,
leave me
right,
alone.
right, right. Well, to kind of add on to what you say, it's exactly like you're reading a book a second time, or you're watching a movie a second time, and all
Right.
of a sudden you say, "Hey, I didn't see that last time."
Exactly.
The same thing is true with coaching, consulting. It's at that moment you realize, you know what? I actually want to go to that next level. I've been doing a million. I actually want to do 1,000,002, right? Or a
Yep.
million five for whatever reason. And I always tell people, I don't care. Like one of the focus, just to make it easy, is going to be money, right? Like make more money. I don't care what you do with the money. You could be making more money and then you go and you open a nonprofit and you put it in there,
Right.
right? It doesn't mean you make more money and then you go and you buy a bigger house, that kind of thing.
It's
So
just a scorecard, and it's not a scorecard to tell you if you're doing better than
right,
Joe down the street. It's a scorecard to let you know if your personal growth has increased over the
right,
previous year.
right. So, but you have to keep an eye on that because sometimes people say, well, money is not important to me. Why would I want coaching or whatever? But at the same time, they complaining about certain things. I know
Money is the currency of
coaching would
influence.
help. Yes, and there's a lot like you say, there's a lot of ways to look at that business. There's a lot of ways to define success. And when I'm talking to people, when I schedule that first call, I call it a focus call. It's basically asking them questions to kind of gauge, where are their values and are they happy? And do I think I could help? That's really is what that call is for. Because even when I tell people, okay, let's chat about whatever
And
that
and do I
challenge.
want to help you? Are you crazy?
Exactly.
Because
Yeah, that too. That
you
too.
get a lot of those.
Right. Because, and the other thing, the other saying, and I'm sure a lot of us know is when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right?
Right.
When you're ready, all of a sudden, like, hey, he's talking exactly about what I tell myself that I want to do. And it could be they've been talking about that, but it just like to you weren't ready, right? So I understand all that, and of course it took many years where you're learning and you're helping other people. And when I decided, you know what, okay, I want to make this into a career, right? Because at the transition for me will be eventually working 1 day a week in clinical and 4 days in coaching, whatever that is, right?
Right.
Coaching, speaking, because I do love the clinical part of it. 30 years later, you're kind of okay, I figured out, you know, now there's new technology is going to make this better, this easier. It depends on, do I want to go totally into that, all of that technology? Or to me, it's more important to run that practice that I love with the patients that I love. And now my daughter's going to be graduating from dental school next year. Uh, I look forward to helping this little person, right? For her to grow and for her to enjoy life, hopefully a lot more than me, because I can tell her where all the potholes is, like don't do this, don't do that, that kind of a thing. And I think that's the greatest joy in coaching, is to see that your client, um, they are happier. And that's kind of my scorecard for coaching someone. Are they happier working with you? Right?
Right.
Yeah, because sometimes again, it may not be the money. If they have more, excuse me, if they make more money but they're not happier, then I'm not sure if I deliver value, even if what they want is to make more money.
I think
Because we
I think a lot of people misplace their idea of success. They believe that the money is what they're looking for, but in reality, it's the freedom.
Yes, and that is part of your personal success,
Right.
right? Like when you say, we'll just touch a little bit about what we talked about before. If you had the money, or if you had already established a practice, right, and you run it to the best of what you can, and you have staff that are loyal, whatever you want to call them, they solid. Something like a pandemic hit, like for me, it was okay. This not in my control. Whatever's happening inside this house, this practice is in my control. I can,
Sphere of
I,
influence, sphere of
yeah,
control.
I know, yeah, like at that during that time it was control. Like, this is the schedule I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to rotate the staff, whatever it was, right? Because in California, they want us to see one patient an hour, right? And on the day that I'm in by myself, I got 7 freaking ops, right? Patient walk from the front to the back. They go, "What happened to everybody?" And I said, "Well, we're supposed to only see you today, right? For this 1 hour. Why? Well, that's the recommendation, you know."
Right.
And I just kind of laugh it off, right? Because at the beginning there was, at that time we didn't know either, but with 7 rooms with separate partitions, is not open bay. I knew it was
Right.
safe. I could sit one in room 1, one room 7, and nothing will ever
I,
happen,
I'm just
right?
glad those idiots didn't make us do positive pressure rooms.
I know, because the talk was going there,
Yeah.
and the talk was about buying all of those machines. One of the doctors that I refer to, he has a group practice, all specialists. He spent a couple 100,000 to, whatever, add it to his practice. And for me, again, that go back to, hey, doc, you know, uh,
Yep.
we learn certain things. Did we have to jump on that bandwagon? And I'm
So
not saying I'm not saying that you did it, that you're wrong. I'm just
mhm.
saying, just just pause and ask yourself, do you know enough?
Know
And
the real reasons too. So
mhm,
I got a UV sterilizer, like one of the
mhm.
hospital operating
Right,
room
right,
UV
right, right,
sterilizers.
right, right,
You
right,
put it in the room within 10 seconds, everything is dead.
right,
And so what I did is I made it part of our practice tour. And this is the hospital grade UV sterilizer that we use to
right,
make sure that you're safe. And this over here is the triple filtration with a military filter, HEPA
right.
filter that we got just to make sure you guys are safe. So don't worry about anything. We've got you taken care of. And you make it selling points, and you make it to where when they see
Exactly.
it, it's something different than anyone else has done because you're explaining it to them. You're making it part of their
Right,
experience. That's
right.
really what patients are after. They're after an experience. They don't know that.
Hmm.
They
And
think they're there for
you,
dentistry.
and you make that part of marketing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's going to be an ROI for sure, because it's part of your marketing. And then the one that don't really make part of the marketing, and they make it more like, look, we're following the guidelines because we love you. It doesn't have the same effect, you know,
Right.
that as what you just said. So, and how do you know the marketing? You study, you learn, you have a consultant who help you, because we don't have to figure everything out ourselves. And for me, I always tell people it's about acceleration. How fast do you want to get to wherever you want to go, right? And because if you don't really care about the timeline, then just take your time. But if you do care about the timeline, then having somebody help you will always speed it up. And it's always funny to me. People would go and, oh, I'm going to spend a weekend, a couple of weekends learning cosmetic dentistry,
Right.
learning implant dentistry. But no, I'm not going to spend any time growing myself as a person or learning marketing to
Well,
help me be better in that aspect.
one of the things I tell people, and I think that this is one of those universal truths, and this isn't something that I learned. Well, that's not true. So real quick story. MGM or MGE rather split
Mm-hmm.
off from a different company, and it split into two companies. One of them was called Silken and the other one was MGE. Silken
Okay.
took a less pressury approach to their consulting, and that is actually who I got my consulting through. So they taught, management by statistics, which, God, guys, learn how to manage your practice by statistics. It's
Mm-hmm.
makes things so much easier. But they taught all the tonal scale and all that kind of stuff, and they were very, very useful. Um, but one of the things that we learned was in sales, people like to do business with happy people. So the more
Right.
you work on yourself and the happier you are in your skin, the less pressury you seem whenever you're putting out this big treatment plan, the more of a confidant rather than a consultant you become. And whenever you do that, all of a sudden you start closing huge cases. I mean, granted, you have to have the skills to be there, and
Mm-hmm.
that's paramount. You don't try to do stuff you're not capable of
Right,
doing.
right, 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 right.
But the average dental practice, according to the ADA, produces, let me see here, as of this year, most recent statistic was $666,000 a year. That's their gross production. And I don't know about you, but I know for a fact if I had to start from scratch, I could start a scratch startup right now and I'd be over $1 million production by the end of the year, or within a year of starting. I know
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I've done it. I know how to do it. I can repeat it. But it's that knowledge of how to talk to people and how to talk to yourself, because a
Right.
lot of us as dentists, and I think it has to do with the way that we're trained, with the way that we're selected for dental school. We have this self-hate gene, and we have to like, there's this order in the Catholic Church that practices self-flagellation. They whip themselves if they feel like they've done something
Okay.
wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and that's us. We are all about self-flagellation. Damn, that crown margin could have been better. And you get to a point where you see an older dentist and they haven't learned how to talk to themselves, but they've learned how to make excuses. And so they'll say, instead of that crown margin could have been better, they'll say, oh, that patient was just a hard patient, which is true too. Don't get me
Right.
wrong.
Right. It could be
But
both.
I think they've given up, and they've given up that passion, and they lose something there. They lose that desire and that just joy of having done something amazing for someone and getting to get paid for it, right? So I think that self-flagellation gives us two traits as dentists that cause us to fail. The first is self-hatred and self-doubt, and it leads to imposter syndrome. Whenever you actually do become successful, you look at yourself, because you've heard so many of these old jaded dentists that say, like my first boss told me, any dentist who can produce over $1 million a year is crooked.
Yeah.
I
I
know
want
you've
to,
heard that, right?
yeah. And I want to
They're doing
expand on,
something wrong.
yeah, I want to expand on that just a little bit. And we all went through dental school, and especially those of us who graduated a little bit um, a while ago, is it's kind of part of the process. They'll put you down. Any kind of
Right.
dignity or self esteem you have, the dental school is going to wipe it out, right? And I'm not sure why it's changed though, because my daughter is going to UCLA right now, same school that I went, and she doesn't have that problem. There's going to be certain instructor who talk down to you, but
Mm-hmm.
in general, that wasn't how the school was run, and it was definitely how it was ran when I was there, right?
Right.
And so I remember in first year, somebody told one of my classmates, Your handwork is no good. You should just drop out and go to med school. Okay. I mean, it took a lot of things to get into the stupid dental school. Now you're just telling me my handwork is no
Right.
good. And really, handwork is something you can work on,
Right.
right? Because it's practice. So, but for the certain people to say things like that, they just didn't understand the psychology, right? And I talked to a doctor a couple of weeks ago, and he started out the conversation. Well, yeah, I want to ask you some questions about my 10-year startup. And I just stopped him right there. I said, Doctor,
Not a startup. It's 10
10
years old.
years startup, right? Startup is like 2 years, 3 years. The
Right.
thing is thinking, the mentality. As long as you think you're a startup, you give yourself, like
You
just like
are.
you said, the excuses.
Exactly.
That's why my staff is this way. That's why this is this way. And people say it again all the time. Well, we didn't learn this in school. Well, yes, I think after about 2 years, if you need to learn it, you got to go learn it yourself. There's just so much
Right.
resource out there, so it's not an excuse. Now, when you work with a consultant or a coach, that's meant to be accelerated because they can just go in there and say, "Oh, these are the 5 things,"
Right.
and this is the true universal truth that you mentioned. These are the things I want you to pay attention to. And whenever you do the negative self-talk, think back, like, you
Well,
know,
it's like buying a used textbook. I was laughing with my wife. I've spent so much
uh-huh,
money over the years buying new textbooks because I always believed I had to have the new textbook because that's what the teachers and the professors told me. And
uh-huh,
and I spent so much money on them when they barely even cracked the damn textbooks. It's a waste of
right,
money. So
right,
I bought a used textbook for a class I'm taking right now because I got
uh-huh,
bored.
uh-huh,
And it's outlined, like it's highlighted. And
right,
I was
right, right,
laughing and I said I should have been buying used textbooks the entire
right.
time. Someone already did the work for me,
There's a word, exactly.
and
Yeah,
that's what consulting is like. It's like buying a used textbook. It's a bunch of
that's been
information.
that's been highlighted.
Exactly, it's been highlighted.
Uh-huh.
Let's where's the cliff notes. Let's
Right,
get to the good stuff.
right, exactly. And again, that go back to when you mentioned at the very beginning your why. Like, why do you want to improve right now? And then the next thing is how fast do you want to improve? Because you could be trying to improve 10 things and you can immediately see the result, or you say, you know what, I'm going to do 1 or 2 things at a time, whichever way, because you got to be the driver, right? A
Right.
coach or consultant is going to be there to help you. They're not supposed to be driving you per se. And especially in coaching is us helping you answer your own questions. We are not answering the question for you. And it took me a long time to learn that because I just want to give the answer. But that's
Right.
not coaching. Coaching is actually asking questions. So eventually the person come up with the answer themselves. And it's a lot of more work than consulting. And that's why I say you have to have that calling. Like, why do you want to spend your time helping this person? Right. And I coach people across industry. So it's not just all dentists, but the mindset is the same, right? The limiting
Yep.
belief,
Absolutely.
the lack of courage, the procrastination, all of those, they're the same because we are human. But what we do is
Absolutely.
we want people to get to the point where, hey, I'm functioning at a higher level, and so now whatever challenge come my way, I'm just going to go and resort back to those particular things that I had focused on, and it's going to help me. It helped me um, when I got certified as a coach and I learned the framework. I realized that a couple of years before that, or just right before that, I went through a lawsuit. Uh, and you love this, and we talk sometime war story because it was a lawsuit with an insurance company. So I gotta really grow personally. And when I learned all these things, I said, wait a minute, I did that, I did that, I did that, I did that, not knowing, right?
Hmm.
Because I didn't have a framework. And then, for example, the pandemic happened. And that's why I went right back to these are the core things, this is what I learned in high performance. I'm going to resort to this. I'm going to, there's certain things you're going to say, okay, I accept that.
Right.
Okay. I'm not even going to worry about it. But these are the things that I know that I can focus on. And I was, you know, during those years, I was in a mastermind. We went around and asked how everybody did. And I said, well, I was forced to work less, but I make the same.
Hmm.
Right. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I'm thinking,
Wait a
Hey,
minute. This
yeah,
is a win.
this actually sounds pretty good.
Right.
But when everybody heard, oh, you can't work or whatever, you just all of a sudden you think that you have to work all the time
Right.
to get to whatever you
Well,
are.
you know,
Yeah.
you're talking about during the pandemic. One of the main things that I did when I did see a patient, I'd say, hey, look, I don't know when they're going to let us back open. I don't know when I'll be able to get you back in. You've already taken the day off of work. Or if they were,
Right, 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 right.
one of the necessary,
Yes.
professions. Um, can we just go ahead and get all of this work here done so that
Exactly.
you don't have any emergencies and I can't come in to see you? Because I would really hate for you to be in pain at home and me not allowed to help you.
Right.
People would go, we can do that? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're here for this thing right here. It doesn't mean
Exactly.
I can't care of these other things because this one right here, this one meets the standard for me to be working on you. But we don't want the other ones to reach that standard. So let's go ahead and get all this knocked out. And then we won't have to worry about any more emergencies. And then you stop and you say
Hmm.
these magic words. Does that sound fair?
Yes, but
And
I'm
then you
laughing.
shut up.
Yes, I'm laughing because you and I were very similar, right? Because there are dentists during that time who would just fix that one tooth
Right.
and send the patient home. I saw so many patients from other offices, and they just said, "Well, my dentist just won't see me
Right.
because he says it's not an emergency," right? And but sometimes it's the emergency to the patient. It's
I was
not,
going to say
right?
that tree goes like this.
Yeah.
Patient calls. Are they in
Uh-huh.
pain?
Yeah.
No. Are they afraid they're going to be in pain? Yes. That's an emergency. If it's an
Right.
emergency to the patient, it's an
Mm-hmm.
emergency because
Right.
that's where the emergency takes place. We all know
Yeah.
almost no one dies of a dental infection these days. And
Exactly.
I'll be honest with you, I suspect that more people are hospitalized because of dental treatment rather than because of the lack of dental treatment. I, I think I think more people are hospitalized because of um, iatrogenic
Hmm.
injury,
Right.
but
Hmm.
that's just
Just putting
my
it
two
out
cents.
there.
I could be wrong. I don't have statistics on that, but
Right.
it's the feeling I get from talking to people.
Right.
I've never seen anyone hospitalized for a dental infection, but I've
Hmm.
seen someone hospitalized for an infection for a bone graft.
Right. And I
Mhm.
wanna just expand a little bit on what you said. Um, like when you're telling the patient you're already here, let's just do everything, right? I have two specific patients who came in, and they came in first for whatever pain, right?
Right.
And and one of them, after we fix whatever, she go, okay, and then I'm also ready to do Invisalign. And
Okay.
I'm looking at her and say, yes, of course. But why now? We've been talking about this for a couple of years. She said, I didn't like the way I look on Zoom, right? So
Yep.
sure, let's just take, you know, get started and get your
I think that was one of the
6,500.
biggest boons to dental practices ever.
Yeah.
When people, okay, there was a
It
hidden
start,
shame, right?
uh-huh.
Because when people started wearing their mask, that little voice in the back of their head that would just it would start to pick about their teeth or their appearance or what have
Right.
you, and the rest of them would just like shut it down. It was silenced for a while. And then all of a sudden, the big reveal, just like
Hmm.
whenever we do a case, I don't know about you, but whenever I do a case that's a cosmetic case,
Uh-huh.
I really talk it down. I don't know, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
said, you tell me. And I hand them a mirror. And
Uh-huh.
that's when the tears start, right?
Right, right, right,
It's
right,
all
right.
about showmanship there because then they tell all their
Yes,
friends how amazing you are. And so
yes.
it was showmanship for them, but working against themselves. They pull this mask off and then
Uh-huh.
boom, they're hit with all the ugly and all the things that
Yep.
for years they've been ignoring. And it just drove it home in their brain every single day. And they started thinking, are people seeing what I look like? You know,
Right, 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 right.
amazing. They've been talking to these same people every single day for most of their
Yep,
lives.
yep.
But it took that being away from people and being reintroduced by video and them seeing what the other person was
I
seeing.
have been seeing, right? And then I
Mind
had
blowing.
yeah, and I had another older lady. She came in because her dentures were hurting her, right? Again,
Right.
it's her emergency. And and I told her, well, we need to make new dentures. It's just these I can't I she was a new patient. Said, okay, let's get started right now. And I
Right.
said, I'm only supposed to see emergency. Like I wanted to make sure that
Right.
she understood. I'm gonna do this for
Well,
you.
she was in pain
You
though. you
No,
know?
no, I know, but I could adjust the denture and
Right.
tell her to come back when the pandemic is over. That kind of a
Right.
thing. It's a different mindset, right?
It
But
is.
I made it a new denture, and it was funny because she just said, "This is going to be the secret between the two of us, right? I'm going to be coming in, and it's not an emergency. It's not an
Right.
emergency because we're making the denture, right? But it
Hmm.
but it taught me that lesson where, and just like you said, it's because that we've learned. Sometimes we've been studying, we've been learning. It's become us, which is what I want to do with the coaching, right? Become
Right.
you. You don't even think twice when you're in the sales process. You think for the patient. You think for the customer, right?
Right.
It no longer. Well, the rule says you whatever. No, this person is in my chair in my house. This person need my help. It's do I pull the trigger and actually help this person? Or do I go and revert back and say, no, the rules say this and I cannot help
Absolutely.
you, right? And that take courage, that take understanding
Well,
yourself, your core values, if independence and
and
freedom
being a good physician of the mouth too. I mean,
right,
so let's look at that denture. That patient came in and they were in pain, they were in discomfort. We
right,
know that the mascatory efficiency of a denture is between 45 and 60% of natural teeth when you have
right,
implants.
right,
So
right, right, right.
a normal denture, even one that's not causing you pain, is only like
Like
30 or
15.
35%
Yeah.
or 15,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at someone who is having pain, it's even further reduced. Now, malnutrition in the elderly and
Right.
sarcopenia that occurs because of it, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's a losing proposition. That's a dead end path. You're putting that person down a really bad path if you don't help them. So
Right.
understanding the basic sciences behind it and the reasons for these treatments is another way that you can, at least in your own mind, say, hey, this is an emergency. They might not be bleeding out on the floor, but if I don't help
Right.
this
Right.
person
Right.
now,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when I'll be able to, and they're going to be eating less and they're going to be malnourished, which means they're going to be more likely to catch, COVID, which means,
Exactly.
it builds on itself, but you have to truly understand your art and your science and be a true physician of the mouth to think that way.
Yeah. And I would tell you that a lot of what you said is not something that you learn from school, right?
So
Because the school,
I may have
I
done a little CE since I got out of school.
like exactly like the 15%. I know I learned that from school because that's what school taught,
Right.
right? That I got that statistic, and that's sometimes I have to explain to the patient. I can make you a denture as like this, or I can make you the implant denture if
Right.
you're going from partial to that situation, right? And so what you say there comes from C's, come from years of learning, of experience. It's a lot faster and more efficient for you to make the new denture and try to adjust the old
Exactly.
one and make them happy with the old one. Um, but again, some of our colleagues in general, they don't spend the time learning that, right? And then they're frustrated because they keep having to adjust the denture, right?
Right.
Whereas you just say, I'm not adjusting your denture anymore after 5 times or whatever because I know it fits well. Your next step is an implant, and it's going to be 15 grand, and but I have financing for you,
my
right?
my my
That,
dentures on my consent form actually
uh-huh,
said that they got 6 free 30-minute appointments
right.
or adjustments after the delivery of the denture.
Mm-hmm.
But that the first day on delivery, that doesn't count. But every single time they would come in, my receptionist was trained because we
To
had
say that,
systems,
right?
and they were trained to say, "Oh, Mr. Smith, it's great to see you. I see that you are in here for your fourth out of five denture appointments. I just want to remind you of that. So let's make sure we get this thing really fitting well today."
Right,
Oh, and just
right,
to remind you, hey, look, this is your fifth out of five denture appointments. It was six, but you know,
right, 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 right.
so the thing is though, you're telling them every single time, they're hearing it every single time, and then they're signing off on that consent sheet every single time. So the patient, we don't like to admit when we've been wrong, anyone, and we don't like
Exactly.
to admit that we've been told something was going to happen when we didn't think it was going to happen and we ignored it. But whenever that patient is seeing that every single visit 6 times, and they're being told every single time, and they're signing on it every single time, you know what you don't get? You don't get patients who are like, well, I don't understand why you can't adjust it for free again, because they know you've
Right.
set the expectation of how much And you also tell them whenever you deliver, you set expectation. Hey, look, the average patient comes in here. We have to actually adjust twice. When we have to start adjusting 5, 6 times, a lot of times it's just better to start again, because it's obviously it's not working. Something is wrong, and
Right, right.
so we need to take a different approach.
Yeah.
But it's communication. It's understanding how people think. It's understanding what motivates people, and that is individual. It's not like you can read a book and say this to every patient. It is, I've got this diagnostic tree, just like when we're diagnosing a disease. I have
Right.
this diagnostic tree, and patient A goes down this path, patient B, patient C. Oh, well, they may have the same outcome here, but it depends. Every single branch along the way of that tree, you're going to diverge, and you're going to use some slightly different. You might use some framing. You might, you know, they might be the kind of patient where you need to sit up in the chair and you're above them because they want to be told what to do. They may be the kind of patient who's very forceful and you need to get down in the chair and you need to be looking up at them and presenting your case so that they feel like they made the decision. They may be someone who wants a confidant, and then you get eye level with them. You lean in, put your hands like this, and you just listen carefully. Speak softly, succinctly, and you repeat what they say. All right, Ms. Jones, I hear what you're saying, but I want to make sure I really understand. You're telling me that what you really want is such and such. Am I understanding you? Okay. So we can't do that, but we can do this. Does that sound
Right.
fair? Yes. Okay. They said it's fair. Guess what? They can never say it's not fair again, because internally
Right.
they will not conflict themselves. It's all these little things. These are things you're going to learn over the years in treatment plan presentation. But what you have to have first is confidence in yourself to know that that's the right thing to do, and confidence in your knowledge. And that's where you're going to use someone like Emily, because she's going to teach you how to grow yourself. Did
And
did 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 did, 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 did I
that
say anything
that
wrong
was
there?
no. What I was gonna say is those exact way of communicating, right? It's That's how you should communicate with your staff also, because again, it's about you as a
Right.
person, your communication, your thoughts, your core values. You're trying to be fair by asking them, is that fair, right? And you're setting the expectation. It's like every day we hear people say, my staff does this, my staff does that. My first question has always been, did you actually train the staff and did you set the expectation? Because
Right.
if you didn't do that and you're just going to come out and say, I've written you up 5 times and I'm going to fire you, there's still going to be, you're going to have a disgruntled staff.
Right.
But if every single time you talk to them and you say, we said this and you do this, and so I'm going to write you up, is this fair? Because we had already talked about this, right? And
Absolutely.
just let them, tell you whatever, but you know what you said, the expectation, you have the right to do that, right? And then people go, I'm afraid so and so is going to leave. I'm afraid this. Again,
Right.
that would go back to personal growth. Do you believe in yourself first? So then you would have the confidence, right? And that's one of the things I learned, years ago when I went through that lawsuit. I got to believe in myself first.
Yep.
And then a couple of years into it, the lawyer, my attorney, say, "Hey, Emily, I think we should win this lawsuit because it finally clicked with him that I'm on the right, because
Right.
how when they start working with you, they don't know you, right? And then you give them all of these, documents and things, and they get it, and so I mean, all of a sudden it just click and say, Emily, let's go kick their ass. So I understand that it takes a process, right? And even when you're confident and you say certain things, people may not buy it the first time, but if that's you every time, they will buy it,
Right.
right? If you just
You make
sporadically
a
come
great
out
point
and be a
there.
hero, yeah, I mean, it got to be you. So that's the high performance coaching that we do is we want you to become this new person, and it's a habit, and it's there a whole bunch of things that you need to work on yourself, and
Absolutely.
then I want that person to show up at home. I want that person to show up at work. I want that person to show up at the party, right? And it's because now it's just you. I think one of the biggest compliments I have, and this is more with people not in the dental industry, because that's kind of where I started. outside the industry, they keep telling me, you've grown a lot,
Hmm.
right? And it would be nice if it was physically, but anyway.
Well, I could share some height with you there, but I can't share any more hair with you.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, so it's a validation, right? That you
Absolutely.
know that you grow, that people are telling you. And that's what I think all of us, I don't care if you're in coaching or whatever, it's great when patients and your friends could tell you that you've grown. Like patient would tell me, I can tell that you like dentistry. And I go, really? Right? And it's just the way you say things, the way you do things.
Right.
Patient can read a lot into that. So you might as well
And
just be
guess
yourself.
what? They
Yeah,
like
but
doing
just be
business with
yourself.
happy people.
Right. But just be yourself because you could fake it this appointment and 6 months later you forget and you're gonna be a different person. And they're gonna remember because they only see you once in a while. So every single time they see you, you make that impression and they believe this is who you are. But if you keep on changing, they don't know who you are.
So you're also tapping into something else there. And I'll say this real quick, and then I'm going to ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
You're tapping into the consistency principle. And
Yeah.
what that means is that there's been a lot of research for all you guys out there, because I know Emily studied a lot of the same stuff I have. I can tell just by talking to her. So there's a consistency principle in that people care less about quality than consistency. And it kind of blows our minds as dentists because we're always, like we're in search of being the best clinician that we can be, or
Right.
having the highest quality crown margins or what have you. But if a person goes to a restaurant, let's say McDonald's, okay, McDonald's isn't successful because McDonald's serves the best burgers in the world. They're
Mm-hmm.
really kind of trash. They're horrible burgers. They're not very good, at least in my opinion. I think mine are better. But what they do a great job of is making sure that the experience you have, from the cleanliness of the bathroom to the cleanliness of the dining room to the size of the patty to the size of the fries to the size of the drink to the prices to everything, it's exactly the same every single time. And if you think about that, if you go in one day to a restaurant and it's got amazing food, you brag to all your friends about how great they are, you go in another time and the food is trash, you feel internally inconsistent because you have said this place was so great. You also feel guilty. You feel ashamed. I mean, these are subconscious things that flit through your mind that
Right.
that you don't dwell on, but they form your opinion. You are very likely to lodge a complaint or leave a bad review of that restaurant. And it's not because you got a substandard meal so much as it is your own internal reaction to your previous praise of the restaurant. People want to be consistent, and being a brand, and you are your brand as your doctor, you are the brand.
Yes.
Being a brand that allows people to feel a consistency is more important than allowing them to feel quality, particularly if the consistency of care or the consistency of experience is lacking. It's just my last freebie for you guys. If you want to build a killer practice, practice consistency. Make sure you have specific standard operating procedures for everything, and that everything is done the same way every single time. And if it's not going to be done the same way, make sure you brag on it so that people know, oh, this is a better way. And then
Right.
make sure it's done that same way every time. So that's the last thing I'm going to say. I'm going to ask you for 4 or 5 takeaways that someone can listen to this interview and go into work tomorrow and be a better version of themselves. And so they're going to have a better practice. Give me 4 or 5 things real quick, and then we're going to talk about how people can contact you if they'd like to talk to you a little bit more. If they've gotten to know you on this podcast and they say, that's the kind of person I want to work with. So 4 to 5 things, Emily.
Yeah. Well, I would say the most important thing for a lot of us is clarity. And by clarity, I mean having your core values, having your non-negotiables. Um, what's most important to you? What are your goals? And when I say that, I mean, don't just like, I'm so clear on what I want. You got to communicate that with everybody around you. If you're doing 1 million and now you want to do 1 million too, everybody around you should know that you want to do 1 million too. You know, the patients, if they want to know, you're going to say, hey, Dr. So-and-so set up this goal. And if we do it, we're all going to go on a cruise. They don't care about the extra 200 that you're talking about. They care about you talking about taking your staff on the cruise. It's the same message. We want to grow, but different people could hear a different version of it. And then every day people are on the ball. We got to grow another 20%, right? So the clarity is not just for you, for everybody around you, for your spouse, for your staff. The second thing is to have courage. And I think courage and confidence, sort of kind of the same, but I like the word courage because it takes a lot out of you to step up. And I'm talking about patient is bullying your staff, right? Are you going to go up there and kick them out,
Yep.
right? Patient, like you just mentioned earlier about the denture. Hey, I pay 3,000 or whatever for this set of dentures. And what do you mean you can't adjust it another time? Now, not everybody have what you have in general, right? You're going to have
Yeah.
5 appointments or otherwise I'm going to charge you. I do that for my braces patient. You can break the bracket so many times. I don't quite do that for the denture patient. But my point is, yes, this is the same patient who keep coming back. Maybe this is a pain in the butt or is this a VIP? Which way do you go, right? And to your point about metric, I always go back and look at how long has this patient been here? How much have they invested in their health? Do I cut them a slack or do I just like, I don't really know this person. We did this procedure and I don't think I want to put up with this, right? And when you know those things, you can get that courage up really fast because it's backed by facts, right?
Right.
So courage is very important. Influence is important. Influence is getting people to agree with you. That's like, to me, that's a very simple thing, like a simple concept. You present a treatment plan, patient accept. You tell your staff we're going to go into a different schedule, rotating schedule, whatever, stagger lunch, whatever you want to say, they agree with you, right? You're out there speaking, you're doing a podcast, you create the platform where you are the expert because you own that platform, you're creating influence, right? And you have to take that and you have to brag about it, like you said earlier. And sometimes we can't because we taught that we're not supposed to, right? In California, you can't even put certain words on your advertising or somebody's going to report you to the board, right? So, and I'm not saying to break the rule. I'm just saying, know that you have to create that influence so people know about you so they can come and see you as as a provider. And productivity is another important thing. And I'm talking about being picky with your time.
Yes.
If you're going to do a filling and it takes 30 minutes, next time go for 25 and see if you can still do a good filling. 15 may not work, so maybe 20 to 25, you can do it like that. Because almost with anything, you can cut down some time and still be efficient and still get good results. And that's being productive, like taking care and preserving your time. And the same thing go when you're at home with your kids, right? Sometimes an extra 5 minutes talking to your kid will make a difference. Like if you spend 5 minutes reading to the kid, that's different than you just sending the kid to bed, right? That's 5 minutes of production or productivity time that you use with your kid. But you only think like that if you look at how am I spending my time?
Right.
Okay. Or is it 5 minutes I'm just gonna be checking out some stuff on Facebook? Or whatever, however you spend your time. So I say clarity, courage, influence, productivity. Those are some of my very, I love those because I think it makes a difference for you as a person growing. And if you take that and you apply it to your business, you're gonna just what's the term? You're gonna blow up because a lot of time people don't realize your business growth is limited by your personal growth. Um, you,
Absolutely.
you talk to somebody who does real well, number wise or whatever, they have a different mindset. So our job is to say, how do I get to that mindset?
I'll tell you, great advice. And I lied because I am going to say just a little bit more. Learn how to eat an elephant. The problem is that when you look at all these things, they seem like so much. But if you think that you could be 1% better every day, it's 365% better every year. And that, my friends, is huge. And the next thing I would say is when you have a goal, teach other people how to eat that elephant too. You want to increase to 1.25 million a year from one. That's only about $260 a day for the average practice, assuming you take 4 weeks off and you only work 4 days a week. Break those numbers down and say, what can we do to add $260 to this practice? Well, that's just 4 patients that get adult fluoride. Let's do a better job with adult fluoride. Oh, well, fluoride trace. This patient is a high risk group. They've had, if you remember your DMFR scores from school, run a DMFR score in every single patient, just as a matter of habit. You're going to find you have a lot of high caries patients in your practice who you could put a neutralizing agent that has a balanced pH, something like Carie Free, the CTX 5000 gel. You sell them a $200 tray that can also be used for whitening, and it protects their teeth, and they get the whitening they want, and it decreases their sensitivity from the whitening. What kind of win is that for everybody? It's a win for your practice. It's a win for the patient. It's good medicine. Learn to think that way, guys. And when you do, your success will be boundless.
I agree, and don't think that you have to be the one doing it.
Oh, no.
What you just mentioned there, that's auxiliary, right?
It is.
But you have to think bigger. That's why when it's thinking about your time, hey, I only want to spend this much time in the office, and that time I'm going to be in the patient's mouth. So
Absolutely.
how do I grow without, adding a day? Well, adding things that other people can do to increase the income.
I tell you, if I could have just associates just do the work that I prescribe and sell, I'd be so happy. I enjoy the act of discussing treatment plans with patients because I'm good at it. We enjoy what we're good at. Find what you're good at. Enjoy life. Now, if you'd like to enjoy life more and you'd like your practice to be a bit healthier, you yourself would like to grow as a person, and you would like to impact the health of your practice, the health and happiness of your family, and let's not forget the health and happiness of your team. Contact Dr. Emily Letran and see if you can get her to give you a diagnosis. So, Emily, how can they contact you?
Well, they can go to my website, is dremilyletran.com. So DREMILYLETRAN.com. Okay. I'm on social media. I'm on the different Facebook groups. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram sometimes. So people send me message, in different platforms. And what I usually do, sometimes we just write back and forth messaging. And then I would say, how about we just hop on a call and you tell me your one challenge. I see if I can help you. Right. Because I'm not good in sitting there and typing all of these things. It just, it's faster when we can just talk and again, going back to being productive, right? You want me to sit there and type this? Or can we just talk for 5 minutes? Right. And I can just give you that answer. And sometime in asking you some question, I know that there's more to it, right? This issue of not having patience, it could be, and you wanted to make more money. It could be how you diagnosing, how you present yourself, how you take care of your staff, how you, like there's so many things, but people just say, okay, no, I just need help with this. I just want this. And that's okay, because I learned from Dan Kennedy, right? He said, let's say how to get 30 customers, new customer. He said he doesn't know, but he knows 30 ways to get one customer.
Right.
And I can tell you the 30 ways. Which one do you choose? Which one do you think is most effective? It all depends on how you're running your practice right now.
Absolutely.
And, so I would love to have a conversation with our colleagues and see if I can help. And like we mentioned before, are we even a good fit? And because if we're not a good fit, we're not going to be happy. And for me, it's very important to be happy. That's one of the things my classmates tell me. What's wrong with you? 30 years later, you're still happy in dentistry. And I said, I don't know. I only do stuff that I like,
Absolutely.
And I have this new passion, coaching people. Why would you want to do that? People just complain to you. No, it's because I know how to help, right? And I know how to not let it get to me. It's the same thing that some of our colleagues go home and bring the stuff with them, or they're thinking about the last patient, the last ground margin.
Right.
That and it's, you have to put that in perspective. If you already try your best, that one may not work out. Hey, tomorrow call the patient. You know what? Just come back for a check. And then you tell the patient, you know what? I think I want to redo this for you.
Absolutely.
It's really that
Stop
simple.
losing sleep.
Exactly. Stop losing sleep over it.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining us today and helping our members here at the Business of Dentistry and the Dear Doc podcast maybe think a little bit differently about themselves and their successes and their failures, and maybe give them a more healthy way of dealing with that. Folks, thank you for joining us and listening to the sound of our voices drone on for about an hour and a half. Long interview, but really, really my pleasure doing it. This is Dr. Emily Letran, Dr. Christopher Huffpower, signing off for the Dear Doc podcast. We'll see you later.